Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Windows and Mirrors. With us today is a fourth year business administration major who has served as the operations coordinator and finance coordinator for the Basic Needs Security Committee. Join us as we take an accelerated journey through some of his battles with food insecurity, adapting to the ebbs and flows of life on Cal's campus, and transitioning to life after graduation. This is his story.
How I got involved with the Basic Needs Security Committee here at Cal. To start off at a very high level, the Basic Needs Security Committee on campus is dedicated to solving food insecurity and housing insecurity for students. I believe in the most recent report, 39% of undergraduate students were food insecure and about 23% of graduate students are food insecure. So we really try to come up with solutions so students aren't missing meals so they can focus on their studies here on campus. How I pretty much got involved with it was I grew up food insecure. I come from a predominantly low-income Hispanic community. I'm a first-generation college student. I went through similar struggles that these students go through on a daily basis growing up, and I wanted to be part of the solution. So when I first came to Cal, I was having a very hard time adjusting. I'm a first-generation college student. I didn't know many people here. So how I got involved with food insecurity initiatives here at Cal was when I first got here, I was having a very hard time adjusting. Like I mentioned earlier, being a first generation college student, low income, you don't really see many people like us here on this campus. So I didn't really have that like community that I could reach out to at first because I didn't know the resources that were available to me. However, I found out about the EOP program, Educational Opportunity Program here on campus that consults students from similar backgrounds as mine, and I met with a counselor named Ruben Canedo who really helped me find my place on this campus. I explained to him where I was coming from, what struggles I was dealing with from back home, and he introduced me to the UC Berkeley Food Pantry. When I went to the UC Berkeley Food Pantry for the first time, I got some items and I wanted to learn more about it, so I became a volunteer for their organizations. I operated the food pantry. I opened it, allowed students to take their items that they needed, and took inventory. As I progressed at my career at Cal, I wanted to become more involved, and I became the operations coordinator for the entire food pantry. So I recruited the volunteers. I changed our inventory to include perishable food items, meaning fruits and vegetables, so students can have more of a holistic meal to solve food insecurity. Later, I became the finance coordinator for the entire Basic Needs Security Committee. Just because of my background of becoming low income, I've always wanted to understand the financial realm. Eventually, I want to have my own nonprofit or be an executive director of a foundation and teach financial literacy for like a true upper bound program. Those are my overarching goals later on. But through my progression in the Basic Needs Security Committee, I saw how essential these initiatives were. There are a lot of students that struggle with the stigma of food insecurity, and we wanted to create that space where all students felt welcome and that we are here to help, which I think is something that's very important for incoming students to realize that Berkeley is really a campus where if a student wants to lead an initiative or create a new program, they can and gain support from staff, faculty, administration to begin whatever they want to start and create that space. When we first opened the food pantry, I joined the food pantry when I was about 4 months old. We were only serving non-perishable food items. Non-perishable food items being canned goods, cereals, boxed goods, and we really didn't see that solving food insecurity since we weren't providing fruits and vegetables. So we wanted to provide perishable food items, and we partnered with the local Berkeley Student Food Collective, which provided fresh produce bags, and each student could pick up a fresh produce bag and geared it towards whatever their diet needs were, so it becomes a more holistic meal. So prior to me attending Cal, Harry LeGrand was a great leader in establishing the food pantry. So it really took his efforts and student efforts on the ASUC to begin opening a food pantry. And again, like I mentioned earlier, if you really believe in something and you can gain the support from like students, staff, faculty, administration, you can pretty much do whatever you want, like lead an initiative on campus. Deciding to come to Cal was actually a very challenging decision because I grew up near LA, so the most obvious option for me was to attend a school in LA, right? However, once I was accepted into Cal, I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship here, and I began thinking how I wanted to challenge myself. And I figured if I would have stayed near LA, I would have been hanging around the same people. You know, I would be coming home every weekend, so I didn't see myself growing as much if I stayed in the area. So I decided to take a leap of faith and come to the school in the Bay Area, and I absolutely do not regret it. I've grown immensely. I've met people from all around the world. I've had the distinct pleasure of visiting my friends in different countries, and I actually found a community that supports me and that I feel comfortable in, where I can truly bring my full self to this campus. So as a business major at Cal, and for working for the Basic Needs Security Committee, my sophomore and junior year, I realized that a lot of these nonprofits run on finances, and a lot of them run solely on like donations, which is a huge challenge because if you get restricted funds, it's a little bit more difficult to allocate those funds to initiatives that you want to lead. But from what I'm learning here on campus, I've actually taken a strategic philanthropy class from executive directors of nonprofits. And I've actually had the opportunity to give a grant of, I believe it was $3,750 to a nonprofit. So I got to learn the back end of how nonprofits actually receive donations and be part of that grant team process. So I think that's like a very valuable resource that I'll be able to use and like geared towards my like career goals. So growing up low income, you encounter many obstacles in your life, right? As well as being a first generation college student, and there's also a language barrier if your family's you come from an immigrant family, and you're really taught that resiliency and how to overcome these challenges. And that's my overarching definition of success. To me, it doesn't matter what position you're in. To me, it matters how many obstacles you've overcome to be where you are today, right? And I feel like here at Cal, if you overcome so many of these challenges, you're pretty much unstoppable, right? If you gear your mind towards anything, you'll be able to achieve it, and you will be a successful student. You won't fall victim to that imposter syndrome. Even though that is there, you'll compare yourself to other students. You'll realize like, wow, these kids come from like very different backgrounds as I do, some of the best high schools. However, you're here for a reason, and recognize the fact that you worked so hard to get here. An anecdote that one of my friends shares a lot to other people is, imagine yourself trying to dig a hole, right? Someone gives you a spoon and tells you dig a hole, versus the other kid who gets a shovel and tells them to dig a hole, right? The spoon that you used to dig your hole got you to Berkeley, and the other student who had a shovel got them to Berkeley as well. So, but what does that say about you, right? Your resources was a spoon. There's definitely, when I was operations coordinator for the food pantry, I spent most of my time in the food pantry, operating it, of course. And what was most like heartwarming for me was whenever a student walked in and breathed that sigh of relief, knowing that the resource to help them was present on campus. And that's something that is deeply rewarding for myself, and knowing that that student is not going to be stressing about what their next meal will be is huge, right? Because now they can focus on their studies. They can be active member of society. They can be successful and attain a degree from like the University of California. So anytime a student walked in and expressed like fascination, or like even some students even walked in and were surprised to see that this resource were here. So I was like very happy to be a part of that process for them. So everybody's welcomed at the food pantry, and we do not take any personal data. The only thing we require is for us to for you to show us your ID, just for us to know that you're actually a Cal student, since this service is only provided for Cal students. However, there is that stigma of like food insecurity that people don't want people to know that they're food insecure or may feel uncomfortable approaching these spaces. However, we want all students to know that they're all welcomed and this space was created as an emergency food relief resource for them, right? And all Cal students qualify. All Cal undergrads and graduate students qualify. We were on Stylus Hall up until October of 2016, I believe. And we are in the new Stylus Hall location, which is the basement of MLK. What I'd want my final message to be to anybody who's like an incoming student or figuring out whether or not they want to come to UC Berkeley is to take that step forward and be confident in their actions, because whatever has happened in their past has prepared them for the future, right? So I want people to be excited for the future and know that your past doesn't define your future, right? So you should have an optimistic mindset for the future and realize how much you're gonna grow. Like if somebody ever asked me in high school that I'll be attending UC Berkeley or be traveling to these other countries, studying abroad, I would have not believed it, right? But as you grow as an individual and as a student, you realize that, you are really in charge of your own future and that you can, take the driver's seat and go wherever you want to go.
Thank you for listening in on another episode of Windows and Mirrors. If you or anyone else you know are struggling to find meals on a consistent basis, feel free to pay a visit to the Berkeley Food Pantry, located in the basement of MLK at Stylus Hall. Love and appreciation to everyone listening in. And go Bears.